Welcome to this rapid revision video looking at Catholic challenges to Elizabeth I. This time we're going to focus on the revolt of the Northern Earls in 1569. Let's have a look at the origins of the revolt. As we've seen before in previous videos, the English Reformation was slower to reach the northwest, which held on to the Catholic faith. The most Catholic counties in England are shown in blue here. Note that these are modern county boundaries, but it illustrates the point. The area was remote from London and Elizabeth's Protestant government, and you can see the areas that were most closely linked to trading with the Netherlands, which was also predominantly Protestant, are the more Protestant areas of England too. Elizabeth had preferred to promote Protestants within her court, which sidelined the ancient noble families of the north who tended to be Catholic. This was the background for rebellion, with England hopelessly divided over a single issue. Not that that would ever happen in the 21st century. Don't mention Brexit. Anyway, let's move on. Why did the Northern Earls revolt? There were several reasons why discontent erupted into revolt. The Northern Earls were Catholic. They wanted England to be Catholic again. The Earls resented their loss of influence at court as Elizabeth promoted Protestant nobles and not them. The Northern Earls were concerned by Elizabeth's refusal to name an heir. A succession crisis would bring instability to England. They considered the imprisoned Mary Queen of Scots a potential heir. She was Catholic, and she would have been a replacement for Elizabeth. All of these things combined to result into rebellion. So let's have a deep dive on the main players now. The first was Thomas Percy, Earl of Northumberland. He had been a prominent member of Mary I's court, but lost this when Elizabeth succeeded her. The Queen also removed his claim to a valuable copper mine in Northumberland. The second was Charles Neville, Earl of Westmoreland. He was another Catholic, but also his brother-in-law. Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk. He was a Protestant, but had close connections to the old Catholic families. Norfolk resented newcomers to court like Sir William Cecil, and he hatched a plan to marry Mary Queen of Scots. He later backed down, though. There were other participants too. Mary Queen of Scots. She supported Norfolk's plan to marry her, hoping it was a potential way to the English throne. Then there was Jane Neville. This was the sister of the Duke of Norfolk and the wife of the Earl of Westmoreland. She encouraged her husband to rebel and hoped to become the sister-in-law to Mary, should she become Queen of England. And lastly, Anne Percy. I'm afraid I don't have a picture of Anne Percy. Sometimes women appear to be airbrushed from history, don't they? Well, Anne Percy was the wife of the Earl of Northumberland. Like Jane Neville, she encouraged her husband to rebel. All very Lady Macbeth of them. In my last video on Mary Queen of Scots, we had a brief look at the 1569 plot. Here's an even more brief recap. Linked to this rebellion was the proposed marriage between Norfolk and Mary. In brief, the plan was as follows. To marry Mary to the Duke of Norfolk, England's most senior noble. As Norfolk was a Protestant, his and Mary's children would be too. Mary and Norfolk's children would then become heirs to the throne. This was seen as something of a compromise. A letter sent about Mary to Philip II of Spain helps to illustrate Mary Queen of Scots' motives. So this is a letter from the Spanish ambassador to Elizabeth's court to Philip II of Spain, which was written in January 1569. The Queen of Scotland told my servant to convey to me the following words. Tell the ambassador that, if his master will help me, I shall be Queen of England in 3 months, and mass shall be said all over the country. So clearly from this, Mary Queen of Scots is trying to suggest that England would become Catholic again if she becomes the ruler, and she is seeking direct support from Spain. This would become a crucial part of the plan of the revolt of the Northern Earls, and that's what we're going to have a look at next. The plan was as follows. The Earls of Northumberland and Westmoreland would raise armies and capture Durham from the unpopular Protestant Archbishop James Pilkington. The rebels would march south then to link up with the Duke of Norfolk. Spanish reinforcements, numbering several thousand troops, would land at Hartlepool to combat resistance by forces loyal to Elizabeth. Then rebel forces would seize control of Elizabeth in London and overthrow her, I suppose killing her if necessary. Mary Queen of Scots would be freed, married to Norfolk and installed as Queen, and they'd live happily ever after, presumably. Well, that's the plan. Next we're going to have a look at what actually happened. Let's have a look at what really happened. We can see our map with some of the main places and players already marked on it. There's going to be quite a lot going on here, so you might want to view this full screen and in HD so it doesn't become blurry. The first thing to happen was that one of Elizabeth's favourites, Robert Dudley, informed on the plot. Norfolk was arrested and sent to the Tower of London, so he's out of the picture now. Next, on November the 9th, 1569, Northumberland and Westmoreland pressed on to Durham. By the 14th, they had ousted the unpopular Pilkington and celebrated Mass, which was also celebrated across the north. By November the 22nd, the rebels controlled the north, and by December the 14th, they had captured Barnard Castle in County Durham. However, the plan was beginning to fall apart, as none of the needed Spanish reinforcements ever actually arrived. Despite initial difficulties, especially in the north, an army of 14,000 soldiers loyal to Elizabeth was raised. By December the 16th, they had reached the River Tees. The rest of the rebels fled north, knowing that they could not confront so mighty a force. Then, Mary was moved south to Coventry. Elizabeth was determined that she would not escape, and Coventry was much easier to monitor. After the revolt, Westmoreland escaped, but Northumberland was beheaded in 1572. Despite pressure, neither Norfolk or Mary were executed, at least initially. Then, 450 people were executed across the north. Elizabeth aimed to set a terrifying example for any would-be rebels. Lastly, in 1570, and this is quite an important outcome, the Pope excommunicated Elizabeth by issuing a papal bull. This means that she had been officially outlawed by the Church, and she was fair game for any Catholics that wanted to overthrow her. This didn't have religious consequences for Elizabeth personally, but it did embolden Catholics who wanted to depose her. Alright, so that's what really happened. You might want to take a screenshot of this so that you can have it for your revision notes, or make some notes now. If you do, just pause the video. If not, we'll have a look at the outcomes. This was the first and most serious threat Elizabeth had faced from her Catholic subjects. Treason laws were strengthened as a result, and the definition of treason widened. Anti-Catholic definitions included calling Elizabeth a heretic and bringing or printing papal bulls to England. The traditional noble families in the north, the Percy and Neville families, found their power at an end. Elizabeth knew she needed to tighten her grip on the distant north. She created a Council of the North to enforce her laws, led by the Protestant Earl of Huntingdon. Despite the executions in the north, though, the majority of Northern Catholics remained loyal to Elizabeth and her religious settlement. However, the papal bull was a problem for her. This order told English Catholics that it was no longer possible to be both a loyal Catholic and a loyal subject to Elizabeth. The Pope was telling them they had to choose. Our final points then. The Northern Earls, the Earls of Northumberland and Westmoreland, along with the Duke of Norfolk, were angered by the sidelining of Catholicism and their loss of influence at court. They hatched a plan to depose Elizabeth and have Mary, Queen of Scots, marry the Duke of Norfolk. Mary would then be placed on the throne of England. The revolt failed. Dudley informed on the plot, and Norfolk was imprisoned. Expected Spanish support never arrived. A force of 14,000 soldiers loyal to Elizabeth made the rebels flee, and as a result, Mary was moved south to Coventry, Norfolk was imprisoned, Westmoreland escaped, and Northumberland was executed. Mary killed 450 rebels in the north, basically making an example, but most Northern Catholics stayed loyal. A Council of the North was created to ensure this. But Pope Pius V excommunicated Elizabeth and issued a papal bull, making English Catholics choose between their faith and their Queen. That's the end of this rapid revision video. I hope it's been useful to you, and if it has, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.